is just a huge honor today to be podcast interviewing Jayne Bandy all the way from Sydney, Australia. Last time I lectured in Sydney, my brother Paul lives in Sydney, and you and I and your husband had lunch by the what is the
Down near Sydney Harbour,
by the harbor. And what's that? What's the big thing called? The
the Opera House.
the Opera House. My
Yeah,
God,
right.
that was beautiful. That was so fun. Jayne began her career as a primary school elementary teacher. Eventually, Jayne's love of people, communication, and teaching led her to start working at a concierge at her husband's dental office, then later to become his practice manager. She is now a consultant and trainer for other dentists and their teams. Jayne's background as a teacher and working on the front line of a dental office provided her with a first-hand experience and the knowledge to now share with other dentists and their teams. Jayne helps dentists to dramatically increase their new patient call conversions and also prevent and reduce cancellation calls by working with dental teams and providing them with training and coaching. Jayne has worked both in Australia and also internationally, doing in-house practice training, Skype training, and workshops. Jayne is very passionate about helping dentists and their teams effectively communicate with patients on the phone, as well as in the dental office, as excellent communication skills allow you to maximize opportunities for dental offices to help their patients, and doing so allows dentists to grow their business. Jayne believes her principles apply not only to older dentists, but also to young dentists as well, and that young dentists starting their own practice should hire well and train well right from the start. Young dentists need to know what they should expect from their team. You know, Jayne, and by the way, Jayne is married to another very good friend of mine, Dr. David Moffat, BDS, who wrote the big yellow book called How to Build the Dental Practice of Your Dreams Without Killing Yourself in Less Than 60 Days. And, having met both of you, having dinner with both of you, you guys are like Batman and Robin. I mean, you guys are, you're each individually amazing, and together it's almost like 1 + 1 = 3. But Jayne, here's the problem. In business, you need customers, and then you need to sell them what you sell, and then you need to keep them loyalty. But dentists, they can't use those words, so they're not customers, they're patients. They don't sell them anything. They present treatment. They have to be weird about everything, and then loyalty. Um, they basically still need new patients after they've been practicing for 40 years in a town of 5,000. You never, ever, ever will meet a dentist who says, "Oh no, we can't take new patients. This town's only got 5,000 people. I only have 2 full-time hygienists at 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. They can each only service 1,000 people twice a year. So we filled up our 2,000 hygienists years ago. We don't take new patients." And then here's the formula of what it looks like. So getting new patients, it takes, the data is clear that it takes about 3.5 new people to call your office before they can convert one into the chair. And a lot of people think it's 4 to 1. So it takes 4 customers calling to get one in the chair. And then when they get in the chair, the data is outstanding again that if you diagnose 3 people and they each have one cavity, you only do one. They only do 38% of their diagnosed treatment. So it takes 4 people to get one in the chair, and then you got to get 3 in the chair to do one filling. And then what do they say? They say, "Oh, I need to advertise more." It's like,
Yeah.
advertise more. It takes 4 leads. It takes 4 leads at 50, 100, $200 a lead to just
Mm.
get one converted into your chair, and then you need 3 people just for one to accept. So my question is, why don't you just give up and go consult in another dental industry? Why are you still working with these crazy dentists?
I think that's a really good point. That whole missed opportunity in dental practices needs to be addressed seriously. Um, I think with dental practices, their focus needs to be more on what happens when the patients are actually ringing the practice. And you're right, Howard. There's so much focus when things aren't going right at the other end, where the appointment book's falling apart and there's no patients booked in. Then their focus seems to be on, how do I get more people to ring the phone? And the biggest problem I find in dental practices is that they're not measuring how many people are actually ringing their phones. And so the problem there is that they have no measure of their conversions, and so a lot of the time they're blaming the fact that they haven't got people ringing in to the practice to make appointments, yet they actually have.
And, and they go to every seminar on how to do a filling or a root canal or a crown, and then they
Mm.
never take their staff to a seminar on how to answer the phone. In fact,
Yeah,
they name her after a piece of furniture. She's the front desk. He's
I
the
know.
doctor.
Yeah,
She's a piece of furniture.
yeah.
So is there any software that you recommend measuring the incoming calls?
I worked briefly with a dentist named Christopher Phelps, who had a company. He's got a company called Call Tracker ROI, and I think he can get around the privacy laws I think you have in the States, and I know it's okay in Australia, recording calls and then transcribing them into words. So it means that the dentist gets a full report. It gives him a clear, uh, accurate record of how many people have called into his practice, who's converting, what the reasons are why patients don't go ahead with their with an appointment when they ring up. So you can really pinpoint where the weaknesses are in the conversation on the phone. And a few of the clients I've worked with have actually used that in Australia, and it's good for the dentist to be aware of it, but also it empowers the team to really do a bit of self analysis as well, which can be a bit confronting at first, but it works really well. I think I know in Australia there's a bit of contention about recording people's calls and feeling like they're being checked every 5 minutes, and that doesn't seem to go down well with a lot of people I speak with. When it comes to the front office teams, they're a bit anxious about being recorded. But this way, it was a little bit open and not like anyone's trying to hide anything, and they can do a bit of self analysis. So yeah, that was working quite well.
So that's I just found it on good old Google, calltracker.roi.com,
Yeah.
and you recommend them.
Yeah, I think Chris Phelps, he does a lot of the art of persuasion. So he's really into developing great communication within the practice, whether it be with the dentist, front office. And I think this was just something that he integrated with his own practice and then shared it with the world.
Yeah, if you're following me on Twitter, I just retweeted it for you. Another way to find it, it's at
Oh,
calltracker.roi,
oh,
and I
fantastic.
just gave him a big retweet.
Yeah, he'll appreciate that.
What's your Twitter?
My Twitter is it's interesting, Howard, that you asked me that. I think it comes up as just as Jayne Bandy, but I don't use Twitter as much as I should. Isn't that a terrible
Well,
thing I have?
I don't have any faith in
Yeah,
Twitter even
I think I
um
tweet my blog. I tweet my blogs. I write 2 blogs a week, and I try and give away as much information as I
Jane.
can.
Oh, okay. Jane
Yeah,
spelled Jayne.
yeah, yeah.
I spelled it Jungle Janeway. J A.
I'm Lady Jane. Thank you, Howard.
There she is.
So yeah, so I'm not as
Dentalphoneexcellent.com. She's at Jayne Bandy, Jayne Bandy.com. I just gave you a retweet too. And
great.
might as well get your husband. What's his?
His would be this David Moffat. Just come
David
Dave
Moffit.
E.T.
E.T.
E.T. Yeah, E.T.
So you said something very interesting, and that is you the different cultures. Like you said, the Australians don't like to be recorded. I have friends in Canada that always say, if you're successful in America, you can say that, and everybody's like, go go go. But if you're in a small town in Canada and you say you have $1 million practice, your neighbors, they frown on that. And still, many countries, dentists can't even advertise. I mean, even countries you wouldn't even
Mm.
know why. Like why Hong Kong and Romania? Why would these two countries ban advertising? So if my homies go to dentalphoneexcellence.com, what are they going to find?
They're going to find all my blogs. So I'm working on my website at the moment. I've seemed to be able to be quite successful in what I do just through social media. That's been a big outlet for me, and providing people with some good information on blogs, and just word of mouth and referrals has been really powerful for me. I think the thing that gives me that credibility, Howard, is that I don't have a lot of credentials other than the fact that I worked in a dental practice for over 20 years with David, and we ran a really successful practice in a working class suburb. And the skills that I now share with teams are just the things I did myself. And I reached out, and I had a lot of great mentors. I had people like um, Linda Miles and Kathy Metaxas, and I even love Sandy Pardue's stuff. I still enjoy seeing her things on Dentaltown. She inspires me as well. So I think from consultants to consultants, we learn from each other. But then it's time to sort of perfect a style and a way to communicate with patients that is unique to you. And obviously, I believe as consultants, there's enough room for us all, and people hire us because of us. They're looking at that, just that one person they believe can really get through to their team and communicate in a way that you will then be able to help them develop and be effective communicators. So
So,
I
so
think
I mean, if I think I'm the only person who's listened to all 680 of my shows, but I'm a dentist. I love dentistry. I got my mastership in the Academy of General Dentistry, my diploma in the International Congress of Odontology, my fellowship in the missions. That's a given. I love dentistry. I'd rather pull four wisdom teeth than go to Rome or Paris or play golf at Pebble Beach. I love it, but the dentist, if your restaurant's not making money and you're selling steak and chicken, going off to a seminar to learn how to make lasagna or TMJ or sleep apnea or Invisalign, I mean, you got to get your house in order. And everybody I know that's at the $2 to $4 million mark has used a dozen different consultants, a dozen. And the dentists just, I mean, they can't fathom that. They don't measure their incoming calls. They don't realize it takes four people to convert one in the chair, and you need three people in the chair for one to get treatment. And so bringing in someone like you to teach that lady named after a desk, a piece of furniture, is the highest return on investment, not learning sleep apnea or TMJ or all those things that you want to learn because you're a dentist. This is what's most important. So how do you actually start training that lady answering the phone? You first recommend they start measuring, recording the phone calls and measure and getting transcripts.
I think I try and match what I actually do by building up some rapport with the people I'm about to work with. Um, Making sure they get me, making sure that we're starting that relationship in the right way. I think that's really important. Just like they will be doing that with patients, people calling in to the practice. But the one thing, Howard, that I find is their mindset has been locked into a way of thinking that all they're doing is answering the phone. So sometimes it's about getting them to think differently. That's, I
and
think,
and it's a cancer. You never have this in all the other industries. The customer service is just amazing when you call American Express, but it's just healthcare and government. I mean, like the doctors I go to, when you go to the front desk, there's a glass there, and you sign in like a cow, and she'll slide open the glass and hand you a clipboard and not even make eye contact. You only find that at the government driver's
mm,
license bureau. I mean, it's only government and healthcare. Everyone else is into customer service. And
yeah.
that's why I'm also the most proud of my homies, because in America, the dentists and the vets and the chiropractors have 10 times more customer service than
Mm.
any of the MDs. The MDs are pathetic.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because I'm just about to enter the world of medical. I've worked out a long time ago that this actually crosses over into other professions, and I think the general medical profession is screaming out for something like this. I think they're starting to realise that they can look outside the box, and they have to now. Things have changed, and that's where I see when I first started working with David in the practice, nearly every single person that rang up made an appointment. It was You just answered the phone and made appointments, and they kept their appointments. And then all of a sudden, over the years, things have just started to change. And I think it's, it has created more pressure for the people who are answering the phone, because the expectation is that their bosses want to know, why are we not booking patients in? But magically, they expect that they're just going to, pull things out of the air, and not that, they need to realize that they need training. They need to be able to be guided and to be given the right information, so that they can, even just the basic thing. I was talking to a gastro doctor yesterday, and I said to him, "What's one of the things on the phone that you believe is a real issue with the people answering a phone?" And he said, "People ring up and ask the price." And that really shocked me. I thought that was just in dental, but it's not. It's happening in all medical professions, that now people are shopping around for the best price.
I
But
think one of the reasons I think one of the reasons that they ask price is because of the asymmetry of information in the transaction. They don't know what to ask. I mean, if I'm calling to make an appointment with a proctologist to get a colonoscopy, I mean, do you take my insurance? I mean, what am I supposed to ask? I mean, I don't know enough. In fact, that's the argument. While why your country, Australia, has a single payer healthcare system. Everybody's covered. And when you
mm,
go to the governments and you find the actual president who led that, you know, decades ago and said, why healthcare? They said because the asymmetry of the information, what the doctor knows, the patient knows. I mean, if the patient goes in there and they say, Jane, you need a bypass. You need to have a surgery. You need to have your tonsils taken out. I mean, what are you supposed to ask? You don't know enough information. It's so asymmetrical. But when they ask the price, if you turn around and say, well, why are you asking about the price of a crown? Did someone tell you need a crown? And then
mm,
then you start a human relationship.
yeah. And I think that's what's not happening in practices, because they don't know what else to ask when they're answering the phone. So they're sort of like the patient. The patient may not know what else to ask. And we're very price driven culture. So I think that, it's all around us: discount, 3 for 1, all of that then starts to infiltrate medical, dental, and that's just the mindset of the people. And I think the people answering the phones also have that as well at times. And so when they're asked that question, they immediately answer the question. They immediately believe that the person on the phone only wants to know that price of the treatment. And if our price doesn't match what they believe to be the right price, then they hang up and that's the end of the call. So it's about realizing that I have this little adage that I made up once, and I think David put it in the big yellow book. They didn't ring to order a pizza. You know, we're really plugging his book today. I think, what a shame I didn't have one ready for you, like the big orange book or something. But yeah, they didn't ring up to order a pizza. They've rung up because they need your help, and the best way to give them help, and really the only way, is to get them to come in, make an appointment, and see the dentist. So I think, if they can keep sight of that, know how do they handle themselves when they're asked those questions. Do you take my insurance? I've worked with a couple of practices in America now, so I'm starting to work with a few. And at first, I thought, wow, the insurance is going to be so different to how our insurance here is in Australia. But when I did a little bit of homework on how the insurance was structured for dental in America, and when I looked at it closely, the type of questions that you guys get asked to what we get asked in Australia is exactly the same. Do you take my insurance? Are you preferred provider? Are you, it's the same. It crosses over culturally, and the UK is the same with NHS. It's not that different.
And and
But
and, and the dentist front office, I like the ROI and getting a transcript, because these should be search engine optimization words on your website. Like, you'll go up to the front office and say, what's the most common question? And they'll say, do you take one of these, 12 or 15 PPOs that they take, these insurance plans? And it's like, okay, so on your website, does it say that you're a provider? Because people are searching, I need a dentist in Sydney, Australia that takes Delta Dental of Australia. Well, if those are your most common questions, then you got to work that onto your websites, because these
yeah,
searches, the founder of Google, Sergey Brin, from Russia and Larry Page from Wisconsin said that the length of the search has been growing nicely at about 5% a year. But now you got voice activation searches, which are exploding. So the long tail of the search, I mean, they're just hitting that microphone button and say, "Hey, is there a dentist in Phoenix, Arizona that takes Connecticut General that's near Ahwatukee?" I mean, that's a long damn search.
Mm.
Whereas, when Google came out, you just would have typed in Phoenix dentist. And yeah, so um,
Yeah. But I think, Howard, like, what I'm trying to focus on is, I talk to dentists about the three critical mistakes they make, and to me, the first one is not being able to convert patients that you pay good money to get them to call the practice into appointments, and the second one is about, how do we treat our patients so that we retain our patients, and the third one is looking at, how do we prevent people from not showing up to appointments, cancelling appointments, which is a really painful thing for a lot of dentists and a lot of medical practices. I asked a receptionist the other day. We have different names for people who work on the front desk. We often in Australia they're referred to as receptionists. I like front office coordinators. I think they're juggling balls all the time and they're good coordinators. And
I just like to not refer to them because no
yeah,
matter what term I
yeah,
call them, I'll get email complaints like, "I'm not a receptionist. I'm an insurance coordinator. I'm not an office manager." They have
yeah.
so many. I'm just a damn dentist. That's what DDS stands for, damn dentist, and something
And I
with an S.
and I
Um,
think, Howard, that confusion of their title is partly, a confusion in their role as well. They don't know what they're doing a lot of the time. They don't know what they refer to, or if they do know, does that really match what they do in the practice? But just going back to that
and
story
they'll
about,
abbreviate dentist, dentist to
yeah,
just doc. But if you abbreviate assistant to just ass, then
yeah,
they get really mad.
yeah, you could be in big trouble there, Howard,
Yeah.
even in Australia, even though we do refer to that slightly differently. But
Yeah.
um,
So what do you like, front office coordinator,
I'd like front office coordinator. I think
or is that what you said?
She was a big advocate for front office coordinator.
Who was?
Um, Linda Miles,
Oh, Linda
I think.
Miles.
So,
Or
yeah,
do you think concierge, is that too French?
concierge is nice. I suppose it's something. I suppose it's just getting used to something. And
The
you're
the
right. There
problem
could
with
be.
concierge in Arizona, no one would be able to spell it, and if you put
Can
on
you
the name
spell
tag,
it?
no one would be able to read it. Yeah,
Yeah,
well, but so the jury's still out on what you call it, but
yeah,
the person answering the phone is the most important person in the office.
absolutely.
And then you go into the dental office, and since the dentist makes it all about her, she's
Mm,
got two assistants, one on each side of her, and then you go up front, and there's one lady answering the phone, and
mm,
then the dentist will spend 40 hours going to courses on root canals. Then you'll say to her, "How many of the incoming calls while you're doing a root canal go to voicemail?" She doesn't know. How many of
mm,
those that went to voicemail were no one even listened to the message? She doesn't know. How many of the voicemails were returned? Doesn't know. How many strange people called before one convention? I don't know. So what are you gonna do this weekend? Oh, I'm gonna go to Tucson at the American Academy of Laser Dentistry, and I'm gonna try to pick what is the ultimate laser. It's like,
mm,
why? It takes four people for one to get in, and you present to three people before one gets treatment. Why don't you work on that funnel?
mm.
Why don't you work on that funnel? And say, why don't you blow open that funnel? And it's
Yeah,
just, and
and
that's
I Yeah, and I think the knowing these numbers and sitting down and really analyzing the story I was going to share before was that I was talking to a receptionist in one of the practice I was working at, and I asked her, what sort of numbers are you recording? What sort of information are you collecting about how you're going, your performance, not just yours but the practice? And she said, oh, we do the new patient numbers. And I said, okay. She wasn't looking at the new patients that then cancel their appointments. She also said to me, "Oh, yeah, we take down the reason why they cancel their appointment." And then I said to her something that really made her think. I said to her, "And what do you do with that information?" And she said, "We don't do anything." So they're recording all this information, spending time asking patients, is there a reason why you can't come in for this appointment? Recording it in their software, and then that's the end of that. So they weren't then looking at, well, do we have a problem? Is there something that we're falling down with that's causing a glut of patients to be cancelling their appointments? How do we prevent that? How can we work on that? How can we improve it? So there was some really, really good information that they just weren't taking the opportunity to use. So I think, a lot of the time that's what's happening. They're just recording all this information, but they just don't know what to do with it. And that's where I come in.
And
So,
they also, there's only two industries where everyone's entitled. Again, it's healthcare and government. Like the hygienist will have a cancellation from 11 o'clock to 12, sit there and watch TV and eat a sandwich, and then at 12 o'clock go to lunch for an hour. And you said, and if you said, well, hey, you're 11 o'clock canceled, take lunch there because I might be able to find one by noon. They're just like, what are you out of your mind? I get lunch at 12.
yeah.
They don't know their break even appointment, so they might have not even broke even until 3 o'clock, and then at
Mm.
4 o'clock they have a cancellation, so they'll just say, well, let's just go home. It's like, well, you got an hour, you've paid all your bills, you broke even. We've done 3,000 a day just to break even, and then after that we only did a filling for 250. Maybe between now and 5 someone will call with a broken tooth or a toothache, and we'll do a
Mm.
root canal and a crown and make bank for the day. But they're just like, no, no, we're leaving at 5. We work 4 days a
Yeah.
week, 8 to 5. We don't care if we go home and we lost some money. We don't care if we broke even, and we're all taking a lunch at noon, even though we all had cancellations at 11. Very, very entitled mentality.
Yeah, and I suppose empowering the front office to take control. They're in control of that part of the business, and it is about getting them to step up. And maybe we need to hire different people now. Maybe gone are the days when we hired someone who was friendly, smiled, and could speak. And I think, that was the expectation. And now it really has changed. The landscape of dentistry has changed. And so for that reason, we have to look very closely at who we're hiring. Are we hiring people who have great attitude? The people that I say get it. I just think just hire people who already get it. So people who are switched on, people that love learning, and start asking those sorts of questions at the interview so that at least then you've got a team who have the potential then to learn more and to be able to match what you need in the practice. And I think the other issue that I see a lot is the dentist doesn't really even know what their expectations should be. What do they expect from someone who's answering the phones in their practice? So it's about everyone sitting down and coming up with a philosophy and creating that in the culture of their practice. And I think everyone jumps in very quickly and they maybe don't plan for these things that down the track then start to as you said, become cancerous and affect your business. So
Yeah, they mostly want to hire someone who's got 10 years experience. They'll say, well, he worked for old man McGregor for 10 years. It's like, well, what was his overhead? What was their conversion rate? What was their treatment line? But, with Amazon is crushing retail. If you look at the stock market, Amazon's market capitalization is bigger than all the other stores combined. Walmart, Costco, all these shoe shops and all that stuff. And I've seen dental offices where these high end stores have booths where it's commission, like makeup, and now these girls are quitting their job because they're showing you all the makeup and they're paid on commission. But then you say after you get the demo, you go home and you go to their Nordstrom's online and you can buy that lipstick for half the price. And these
yeah,
girls are like, I'm working on commission, and the owners are throwing me under a bus to keep compete online with Amazon. And then you hire that girl to answer your phone. Someone that doesn't come from 10 years of the Department of Motor Vehicles or some other dentist with 89% overhead, but comes from someone selling commission, and they got the attitude. They got women. They're selling. I mean, you're right. It's time to stop hiring people with 10 years experience in a flat dead dental office or government agency, and bringing people in from sales and retail. Someone who knows how to
yeah.
who loves to sell.
I know, and it's interesting when we have our recruiting online is called Seek, and you have a look at the dentists who post ads, and one of them is experience required. And that's it. It doesn't really, what sort of experience, what, really pinpoint and be specific about the sort of things that you need, so you filter through these people, and at least the people turning up for the interview, are, at least there's a beginning there with the people that you get to choose from. But it is very fascinating, and I see a lot of people. I offer workshops. I also work in practices as well, but my workshops are quite fascinating because I get to see a mix of different people arriving for my workshop, and the sort of interaction that I have with some of these people. And sometimes you're working with people that are so shy, lack so much confidence, and that seems to be an overall theme, that they want to get confidence. And I think confidence is something that can be developed once you feel comfortable and have the knowledge to be able to bring to your job. I think that can be developed, especially for someone quite young. Let's say you do hire someone that is more experienced in the dental industry, then maybe they have a bit more confidence. But I think it definitely can be something that's developed over time with the right skills. And but they just get thrown into these jobs, and just as long as your hand's working and you can answer the phone, and then all of a sudden there's so much pressure put on them, but yet no one's really sat down and said, okay, let's look at this level of skill that you need to do this job. So I
Yeah,
think
I mean,
it's
the dentist went to school for 8 years to be a dentist. The hygienist went 4 years. My assistants all went for a year. And then you hire people off the street to work the front desk and don't even train them. And they're the most important part of the economic equation, converting incoming calls to patients. You talked about, I agree that you hire on attitude and train for skill. I mean, you got to start with the attitude is non-negotiable. You hire on attitude. I can train a monkey to do a root canal or make a temporary or schedule an appointment on software. That is not the issue. The issue is the attitude, and
yeah,
and that is the worst problem with the dentist, is because their attitude is, I just believe that if I just do the best root canal on every molar, and I'm an endodontist, that'll all take care of itself. And that's so true in so many ways. But you still got to have the attitude that, you have to learn the business side, and you have to,
yeah.
you know,
I heard someone say recently that we like to think that we work with people's teeth, but we actually work with people. And I think that's where we need to always start, as well as with the teams that we work with as well. We need to look at, the people skills that we offer our patients and use with each other. And I thought that the other day when I was trying on some clothes in a department store. I thought, we really think it's all about the clothes, but it's about the people wearing the clothes. So I think, if we start to really, and that's where all that customer service does come in. But the one thing I said to a group of women at my last workshop was just also work on your likability. I think, people like to do business with people they like. And then after that, then they look at all the other things. So being on the phone with someone and being able to build up that rapport and that likability is a really good first step. Again, you want to make sure that as you take that first call, that you're also asking great questions. And the biggest stumbling block I find with young women learning these skills is that they say, well, when the patient asks a question, when the person's on the phone, they ask a question, don't I have to answer the question? And I said, no, forget everything your mother ever told you about don't answer a question with a question. It's okay to ask questions, but you need to get permission to start asking questions. And then you can ask a million questions. So, it's about deflecting from the original question, but still addressing it at the end of the call. But no one said you had to answer it straight away. And that's the one thing that I find makes a big difference when these new patients are calling up the practice. Don't feel like you have to answer that question immediately.
and
Take your
and
time.
and
Build.
well, you just said take your time, and you can deflect it. And you don't have to answer it immediately. But the bottom line is, the dentist has two assistants and one lady up front, or
Yeah.
they'll be more busy. And they'll have. I know dentists have four assistants and two ladies up front, and I
Mm.
mean it's just a nonstop hurricane tornado all day. Can you please hold? Can you please
Yeah.
hold? Miss that call.
Yeah.
Went to voicemail. It's so the dentist has got to get the attitude that that front desk is the opening of the funnel, And if
Yeah.
you double the number of calls answered live, I don't care if you're delivering pizza, you'll deliver twice as many pizzas. So,
Yeah.
quit going to all the pepperoni seminars and start answering all. And the other reason I like the calls coming in is because most of the calls coming in is because you are a good dentist. You did a good root canal. You
Mm.
didn't hurt them. And Linda told her sister Mary, and Simone told Shawanda. And when those people come in with an element of trust, they buy
Yeah.
3 times as much dentistry as someone who comes in on a blind lead. You're from a Google search. They drove by your office. They come in there. They don't know you from Adam, and then all of a sudden you tell them they have no pain, and all of a sudden you tell them they have 3 cavities, and they don't believe you, and they leave, and they don't come back. So, gosh, you just have to answer those organic calls from word of mouth referral. They're missing so many of those.
I know. I know. And even finding out, as you said, even if people are coming from leads, from websites, from social media, is finding out what was the reason why you chose our practice. No one really ever asks that question or finds that out, because that's a really good way to move someone away from what they believe they need to ask about prices, about do you take my insurance. And I worked with a practice in Dallas, and they were getting a lot of insurance questions. And I said, have you ever asked the patient, what was the reason why you decided to choose this dentist to be your dentist? So there was some reason why they called you in the first place, and then work on that. Work on the real reason why they've called you. And usually you get information, oh, I wanted to make sure that they had some sedation dentistry. I really didn't. And the other great question I love people asking is there a reason why you're not returning to your previous dentist? Because most people have come from another dentist, unless they're really young and this is their first dental experience, but they've come from another dental practice somewhere in time. So it's finding out what the reason is why they wouldn't go back. It could be geographic, there could be some basic reasons, but there might be some really juicy information that they can share with you that would have a lot to do with the conversation you'll have with them. But you're right, that we're juggling balls in the air. We've got patients coming in the door, someone's coming out to do a handover. We're trying to give good value and time with this new patient. So we do need to consider what we're offering those people on that call as well, and for not to feel like we're having to rush off the phone. So there's so many intricacies and things to consider when we're looking at how our phones are being answered. But we also want to make it simple and easy to follow, and something that's enjoyable in our day. So, I know training, sometimes I have to be very careful, because sometimes I create a little bit of what I think is overthinking. And I try and then bring it back to the basics and the simplicity of what it actually is as well. Because, it can scare a lot of people when you start saying to them, this is what you should be doing on the phone. And in my workshops, I'll bring up um, a great idea, and you can just see their heads going, oh, another thing I have to do, another thing I have to do. So it's about, well, start taking out all the stuff that's not working and just bring in the things that are working. Keep it simple to start with. Start building on it. When I'm working in offices, I also try, I think this is my background as a primary school teacher, we don't arrive in a classroom full of 35-year-olds and presume that they're going to understand what we're going to teach them. So what we do is we look at where they're at, and then we build on it like a building block. And it's, has more meaning for them as well, and get them to interact with their learning. So,
So,
yeah.
what grades did you teach?
I taught elementary school, which is our primary school here in
Right.
Australia. So ages 5 to about 12 or 13.
Well, I have to tell you a true story. I raised 4 boys, Eric, Greg, Ryan, and Zach, and every single one of them wanted to marry their kindergarten teacher, first grade, and I believe second. I think it was about the third grade before they started noticing the other girls in the class. But every one of them had a total crush on their teachers. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh! And
And,
when
and
and what was so amazing the most is how anything she said to them was so powerful. I mean, if she wrote a note on their deal or gave them a star, I mean, it was just a really, really amazing deal. Um, back to a dental office capacity. Let's just say the average dental office has one hygienist. If she works 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, it's 2,000 hours. She can see 1,000 people twice a year. Yet all dentists are getting about 25 new patients a month, which means they would fill up a whole new hygienist every 3 years. But you come back after 3 years, 6 years, 9 years, 12 years, there's no increase in the hygiene capacity. They had this one hygienist named Betty for 40 years. And the
Yeah,
whole 40 years, all they talk about is, Jayne, what works on new patients? I need new patients. Do you recommend Facebook, direct mail, billboards? How do I get more new patients? And you mentioned the three problems were conversion, loyalty, and cancellation. When you look at the Fortune 500, all they're focused on is loyalty programs. Amazon Prime, credit cards, all these points, airlines. Every time you fly, you get reward. All the sophisticated players put all their money in keeping customers for life, and dentists just they think the only people that need dentistry is a new patient.
yeah.
What do you recommend to
And
increase patient loyalty of keeping customers for life?
well, I believe obviously offering them that customer service so that they, that likability that you have in your practice, and I know it sounds so simple, and just, that those people wouldn't ever think of going anywhere else. And making sure that you're really switched on and listening to them and not putting all your focus on the new patient. We often see, especially on social media, I see a lot of new patient offer. And I'm thinking, well, wonder what the existing patients think about that. The fact that no one's really nurturing and giving them any special treatment. So it all seems to be, you're right, focused on the new patient. And it costs so much to bring in new patients all the time. And I'm not saying that you should ever let your guard down and not have new patients coming in, because unfortunately you do lose patients through, just through attrition of patients, through, patients passing, moving geographics. So there is that attrition of patients, but I think you're right, it's too high. And that old saying, we should make sure you close the back door. But if you're going to close the back door and keep all your patients in, how do you keep them in? So I know we used to have a referral reward system set up for our patients who are great referrers, because that is just, if not for want of a better word, money in your pocket. Because, they're patients that come to you, and all you had to do was reward your patients so that then they would go out and bring patients to you. The one thing I make sure in my training is I teach them the language to use to ask patients to refer patients to your practice. So you have to ask patients that. Sometimes just having a sign up saying that we reward patients who send, referrals to our practice is not enough. So we need to have the language so that we can ask them, could you do me a big favour? Would you be able to send some of your family and friends, or do you know anyone that will be interested in coming to see our dentist? So, there's ways to increase new patients coming in that way, but maintaining patients in your practice, I think it's just about how we treat our patients. Making sure, that we set our appointments up properly with our patients as well, so that we train new patients coming in to know how we do things at our practice, that we treat them with respect. I see a lot of practices putting up signs saying, oh, there's a cancellation fee. They're sending messages to patients that they're not. They believe that the patients are going to start cancelling appointments, so they start punishing patients, and so that becomes part of their relationship with their patients. And I don't think that works. I've done both myself in a practice, and I think just setting patients up and making their appointments properly is the best way. And also, if patients do ring up and want to cancel their appointment for a reason, somewhere down the line, depending on the reason, that you've probably not set the appointment up properly. So their mindset is that I am keeping this appointment, and being able to handle those calls. So all of a sudden, what I see happening is the cancellation calls taken. The front office team know that when they accept the cancellation, that they really need to reschedule. So they focus on rescheduling the appointment rather than keeping the appointment where it is. So I do a bit of training where I teach teams to be able to not only prevent cancellations, but also give patients an opportunity to keep their appointment. And that's very rarely done in practices. Straight away, they jump straight into rescheduling appointment, or worse still, the patient will ring you later and make the appointment later, and then all of a sudden they disappear out of and you've those patients. So
They never remember what you did. They only remember how you made them feel. I mean, for
yeah,
30 years, I've had people say, "Yeah, that crown you did last year, it fell off when I was eating a sandwich." It's like, okay, well, I did this crown over here, and this one over here you had before you saw me 20 years ago. And so
mm,
they don't ever remember what you did. But yeah, so putting up a cancellation fee and all these things, the more you make them feel bad, they're going to go away. The more you make them feel good, they're going to stay.
absolutely, absolutely. And but you're right though. I think practices need to work on retention. They need to, one of the biggest cancelled appointments we find in Australia. I don't know, just the practices I worked in America that had a hygienist. This was the same for them. The hygiene department was the biggest cancelled appointment. So, that was something that I've worked with a few practices where we've looked, well, why is that happening? So once we get to the why, it's, how can we now prevent that and put things into place so that we can reduce it? And look, I offer workshops where I feel like in the title of my workshop, I'm offering 100% information on how to increase call conversion so that every call is converted and everyone is prevented from cancelling appointments and all cancellations are turned around. And that's not realistic. That's Disneyland. So, we need to just look at what our conversion rates are. I've worked with a few practices where they had 35% conversion rate. So that meant 65% of the people calling into the practice weren't making appointments. So once I started focusing on that negative number, it became quite painful to them to see that they weren't doing as well as what they thought they were. And it's the same with the cancellation appointments. They're horrified once they start analysing how many patients are actually cancelling. They get all excited about the new patient that turns up for the appointment. And then I say to them, how many of those new patients actually have a next appointment? And they're horrified at the numbers. They don't. A lot of them don't. They've come in once and that's the end of it. So these are all things that
Yeah,
we.
they never know their front office call conversion rate to the chair, and then once someone gets in chair, the conversion rate to trim. They never know that. You could talk to 1,000 dentists for
Mm,
1,000 days, and none of them would know. And that's also why hygiene departments are better when there's 2 or 3 hygienists, because a lot of hygienists say, "I don't have time to schedule the recall. I want them as they're walking out front," because they don't want to perform and be likable and be so nice that at the end of the hour the teacher says, "Hey, can I schedule you to get your teeth cleaned, for your next appointment at 3, 4, 6 months," because they don't even want to present that, because they don't even really think they earn it. There's a thread today on Dentaltown. My hygienist is always
mm,
talking down to the patient. She's always, talking down to them because they're not brushing right, they're not flossing right. Well, if that means that, well, after that hour of talking down to them, that you had to schedule, and then you got at the end of the day, you said, okay, you had 8 cleanings and you only rescheduled 3, but
mhm.
Missy in the next room had 8 patients and she scheduled all 8.
Yeah.
And and you start getting benchmarks, because and I also see it in dental school where, back in the day when I went to dental school, it was the military mentality. They weren't there to help. There was discipline. They just went out of their way to just be a jerk. And then the new dental schools that started with University of Pacific, Art Dagoni, Jack Dillenberg at AT Stella Mesa, where God, these are your future colleagues. These are your future school donors. These are our colleagues. And like Jack Dillenberg, the night before school starts, he invites all the dental students out to his house and just has a big drunken barbecue. And I mean, and back in my day, you feared the dean. I mean, if the dean
Yeah.
was coming down the hall, you'd go the other direction. I mean, so that old mindset of scolding the patient for not brushing and flossing and
Mhm.
talking down, and again, it's that likability factor. I've been in dental offices where I watch a dentist all day long say, well, I know this is going to be hard for you to understand, but and then they start explaining root canal. It's like, so you start off with, "You're stupid. I'm smart. I'm a
Yeah.
doctor. You're a Neanderthal. You're a Cro-Magnon." I mean, it's just increase
Mm,
in their likability factor. You know,
Yeah,
and another great way to increase your likability factor is, all these schools, all these cities have these little performance deals. What's it called when you what's it called when you just are free flowing, live, spontaneous play?
like creative.
Well, there's comedy, and then
Yeah,
there's that other genre of comedy where they an audience member says a theme like um you got a new cat, and then they just have to start free flowing a
yeah,
dialogue. What you know what that's called?
yeah. No, I'm trying to think
What,
now.
Ryan?
Ryan, yeah,
Improv. Improv.
improv. Yeah, yeah.
And
Okay.
there's I went to Tempe has a school for comedy, and stand up is the most brutal, because if you walk out there on stage and you say a joke, you're a man, you say a joke about
Yeah.
women, you might have just lost half the crowd. Then
Mhm.
you're in Pittsburgh, you make a coal mining joke, and I mean, you got to turn all that stuff inward, because I mean, three jokes, your first three jokes got to crush, or you're booed off the stage. And I think a lot of these skill sets, like, I mean, how long is comedy school? I mean, it's only, one night a week for 6 weeks. Improv. I know dentists and
Yeah.
that went to improv, fell in love with it, and it totally developed the treatment plan presentation, the new patient experience. I mean, the new patient experience is the existing patient experience of the customers for life. I mean, it's just not a new patient experience. Like, when they all come in, are they made to feel special? Do you engage
Yeah.
them? And it's improv, because you don't
Yeah.
know what they're going to say. You don't know what's going to happen, but it's how you make them feel, how you keep
Absolutely.
them for life.
And I think that's happening. That happens in the dental surgery. That happens with a hygienist. That should be happening on the phone. Or having those improv skills is really important, because every single call that comes in is so different. Every single patient that sees the dentist is so different there, and it's about getting to know them as people, getting to know them as patients, and then getting to know their mouth, their teeth. And I think this is where dentists, yeah, more pressure on dentists now to have those sorts of skills, the skills that maybe one day the dental degree will have a communication section on it as well. It might mean, a bit of extra time on their study, but I think, yeah, I think that'd be great for them to be coming straight out of university and having some idea of how to communicate with patients. So I think our expectations as consumers, as patients, has changed, and so it is so different answering the phone in a dental practice now. It's not like it used to be. So I forgot to show you. I had some breakfast this morning.
A Vegemite sandwich.
I
Oh
thought
my
I'd.
gosh. Now, is your favorite band Men at Work?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm the girl from down under. Yeah,
Oh my God, I love Men at Work, and one of the lyrics was a Vegemite sandwich.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I have to be honest with you, though, I was not a big fan of the taste of Vegemite.
But when you look at it, it looks like Nutella,
It looks
doesn't
like
it?
Nutella, but it does not taste like it.
Oh, we always love it when we see people in
Uh,
America
so
try it for the first time.
I lost my brother to Sydney. He grew up in Kansas, and and he got a job transfer to Sydney, so they thought they were going to be there for 3 years. After he was there for about 3 hours, he applied for citizenship. I mean, you can't move to Sydney, Australia, and then back to Kansas. Maybe if he'd have came from New York or Vancouver or San Fran, maybe he would have been tempted to come back. But there's nothing in
Yeah,
Kansas I can get. But anyway, so I love lecturing down there more than ever now, and I always take at least two or three of my boys, and just make a couple
yeah,
weeks out of it. But I have to say that in all seriousness, I've lectured in 6 of the 7 continents, a lot, and Sydney, Australia, is the greatest civilization on earth. I mean, you don't even
oh,
need a car.
thank you, Howard.
There's you
Yeah,
never there like there's no sections of town where you feel like you're gonna get robbed or mugged, or I mean, it's
yeah,
safer than any American city. I mean, it's just safe. It's clean. They're friendly. They all love Americans. I don't know why that is, but
yeah.
they do. They love Americans. I don't know if it's because they feel sorry for us, or
I think it's because the Americans love us too. I think that, that nice relationship, and it's quite interesting because both David and myself have had so much interest from American dentists to say, hey, what are these guys doing down in Australia? Have they got something that's a little bit different? And we have. But it's like a lot of things. I was listening to a documentary on a producer named Nora Ephron, and she did Heartburn, I think, with Jack Nicholson, and there were a few movies and this particular documentary was about something she'd written about copy, and she more or less said everything's all just copy. Everything's been done before, from the beginning of mankind. All the things that we're doing now and putting into place when it comes to skills are things that really aren't that new. Things that but we need to remind ourselves to start bringing those things back into our business, and the things that are tried and true, and that's probably why I'm a big lover of Sandy Pardue's stuff. At first you might listen to her or read some of her stuff and you think, oh, it's all quite old fashioned. It's been around for so long, but it's still great, and it's still important to start bringing those things
Well,
back into our.
I can say something about Kathy Purdue. I mean Sandy Purdue, big time.
Yeah,
Is she's from the South. She's from
yeah.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and the South is more into Southern hospitality. They're just a nicer bunch of people in the South, and they're sweet tea, and they're just more friendly. Whereas you go to some areas like New Jersey, it's like, hey, hey, they're just a little more rougher around the edges. I'll never forget the first time I went to New York City. I mean, it's like my eyes were this big. I mean, people talk to you, their faces were closer, they were louder, they were shout. And I also noticed that the greatest companies in America all came from the small towns. Because when you started Walmart in a town of 5,000 in Bentonville, Arkansas, he pioneered returns. I mean, how was Sam? If you bought a pair of shoes from him and the heel fell off the next day, how could he not take it back? But in
Mm,
Chicago or in Dallas or New York, you could say, well, wait, you have to bring in a receipt, and we only take, you can be a
yeah.
tough ass in New Jersey or Chicago or Cleveland, but you can't in Bentonville, Arkansas. I mean, little
Mm,
bitty old Pizza Hut started in Wichita, Kansas. I mean, so small town friendly people, they get an A in the attitude and the HR, and then the more brutal the policy is, and the more economically unfriendly to the consumer it is, they're always from a town of 1, 2, or 3, or 4 million, because they
mm.
just figure they can piss off half the people in Sydney and still be in business. But you can't have that strategy in rural America.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that small town mindset is there's something to be seen. It's something positive. It's not always a negative aspect, is it? That all of a sudden
And,
you're a
and a
bit.
lot of the neighbors make fun of me when I moved in here years ago because they said, "Where are you from?" And I say, "Kansas." They go, "Yeah, I figured it was something small town out in the rural." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because you always wave at me when we drive by." They go, they
Oh,
go,
yeah,
they go. No one waves in Phoenix,
gosh,
but you
yeah,
always wave. So they
yeah,
know I'm some hillbilly born in the barn from Kansas,
mm,
because it's just in your nature. I mean, well, why wouldn't you wave to your neighbor
yeah.
who's going out to pick up the paper or leaving for work? I mean,
And it's interesting you say that, Howard, because I think there's different types of patients for different types of practices as well, and that's part of my training. Is I have a lot of dentists who send their teams because they're worried about the big corporate takeovers and trying to compete with them, and now we've got health funds setting up dental clinics everywhere, and so a lot of these dentists are feeling this pressure, not realizing there's always going to be the patients that want to come and see the private practitioner. But it's about they want to know, how do I set myself apart? Or no, they say, how do I compete with these big people? And I say to them, set yourself apart. Know what makes you different. Be true to that. And part of that is spending time with patients, offering customer service, really nailing it on the phone, because you
I'll
can.
I'll tell you their Achilles tendon,
Yeah.
because I know these boys. They'll report on how many how many offices they have, had their sales, their revenue, their growth, how many DSOs have more than 50 locations in more than one state. They'll report on any number, but there's one taboo number where if you even start saying it and quoting it, they start threatening lawsuits, and that is their associate dentist turnover. And here you're talking about creating a new patient experience to keep customers for life. A lot of those chains can't keep their average associate dentist for a year. How can you be afraid of a corporate dentist? Oh, yeah, they might have got a better location. They might have more visibility. They might be better at marketing and advertising and search engine, all the business stuff. But when the patients come in there and say, every time I go in there, it's a different doctor. I mean,
Yeah,
how do you keep patients for life if you can't keep a dentist for a year and you're in
yeah,
the dental business? So if corporate is going to make the next level, they're going to have to learn what is it? Why can they not keep associates? And I think that's part of the stuff that's not going to change. And I think that, I didn't see the cell phone coming. I didn't see the computer. I didn't see all this virtual. I couldn't see ahead of the curve, but I can look back at 2 million years of Homo sapien, where 100 billion have come and died, and I guarantee you, there's some things that aren't going to change. They don't want to
yeah,
work for you. They want to work for themselves. They don't want anybody telling them what to do. They don't want to live under your thumb. They don't want competition. They don't want transparency. These are monkeys. They want to go in their own cave and be left alone. And no one goes to school for 8 years to be your little employee. They don't do it. And so I don't care if the telegraph turns into the telephone, turns into the internet. I don't care if the phone was nailed to the wall, then it came off the wall, now it's got a flashlight and a calculator, and that's crazy stuff. You're still a sapien. You're still a human. And
mm,
humans, they can barely, and when they go to college, how many of them switch roommates the first semester? They don't like other people living in their dorm room. They don't like a boss
mm,
coming in and telling them what to do. They don't like transparency. They don't like people knowing what they do. They're very upset that the government's you know recording their phone calls and all that stuff from Snowden. They don't like transparency. They don't like competition. They don't like title to do. And I think corporate is linear thinking. They're saying, well, in the last 20 years, we've gone from this percent to 12%. So in the next 20 years, we'll go from 12 to 24. And they're just linear thinking. And they're
yeah,
not realizing that 2 million year old Homo sapien, it ain't going to change for you. So they're
mm,
going to have to, I think they are going to have to figure out something like the lawyers did where make them a partner. I mean, no one wants to be your employee for 40 years, but like in law firms, after you've been there for 4 or 5 years, they make you a partner. Well, when
yeah,
I'm a partner, it's kind of like a teacher getting tenured. It's like, well, when I'm a partner, you just can't flippantly fire me and you can't withhold information from me. And I have access to, they're going to have to do something because if they can't keep their dentists, they're not going to keep their customers. And I've had more people come into me and have me review a treatment plan they were given purely for the fact that when they went back there, the doctor that gave them to wasn't even there anymore. And
yeah,
they lost
yeah.
all confidence.
So that relationship building was key. That was a really big part of what the patient's expectations are. And look, part of my training, I always say that there are going to be some patients that are just not a match for you, and you got to look at, obviously, with the marketing, who you're attracting to the practice as well, and making sure you're setting that up and that you're pinpointing the markets of people that you want ringing your phone. But yeah, I believe that there is always going to be a place for the private practitioner and they shouldn't be so scared, but I can understand why they are.
Well, there are a lot of patients I don't like to treat, especially all of them that weigh under 50 pounds.
Why is that?
Screaming children. The person I love the most on earth is pediatric dentists. Why they decided to take the worst job in the world, I don't know, but it's so nice to be able to
Yeah.
sit there and Jan doesn't even ask me. She goes, "Well, I know you're going to refer." So I already did. I already did. I headed her off in the waiting room. She brought in a screaming 4-year-old. She's a new patient. We set her right down the street.
Yeah.
That's
And it's funny, I worked in a practice with a dentist that decided that she didn't want to treat any more children. And I said to her,
Was she
"How's
a
that going?"
genius?
Well, yeah, yeah. It's funny though
What
because
what did you say to her? I'm sorry. What did you say to her?
well, I just said, "How is that going?" Meaning how are the girls on the phone handling that inquiry about seeing their children. And so we worked out a dialogue to use, and it was along the lines of, that the dentist really wants only the very best care. So what she does now is she doesn't see the patients, but she refers your children to a pediatric dentist. And the one thing I love about people, Howard, is that if you tell people that other people have done this and have been happy with this, people will go along more with something because other people they've never met before. And I suppose that's what happens on social media with recommendations, is that you can just say that many of our patients are doing this now, and they've been really happy with their children seeing the pediatric dentist. So, and when the time comes when they turn into more civilized adults, not that you would say that to the patients, but, then they come back and see the dentist here. But I think I use that a lot in training, the idea of consensus. And that was something Christopher Phelps actually taught me, was people will often be quite easily persuaded to do what's in their best interest if they know other patients have also done that. Like, do you take my insurance? Knowing that you might not be able to take their insurance and give them full coverage, but you can still accept their insurance because many of our patients have accepted, have the same insurance.
And that's Christopher Phelps with Call Tracker ROI.
So he's the same guy, yeah. So he's
Yeah,
a dentist.
he's a
And
dentist. And what city is he in?
I'd like to say he's in California. I'm trying to think where.
California is
Uh,
10% of America. It's the
I
same.
know.
It's the same population as Canada. One
I
in
know
every
that
10 people live in
you got
California.
to give me a break. I am from Australia.
Yeah. Do you know Australia, China, and the United States are all the exact same size in square miles? They're all 3.6 million square miles.
Is that
And
right? I didn't know that.
China's got 1,300,000,000. So we have 1,000,000,000 less in the same size. We have 320
Yeah.
million, and you have 22 million.
They
In
did
fact,
that thing the other day where they switched the globe. So they put America down the bottom, Australia up the top. And the perspective that we get on the world globe is that it looks then like America is quite dominant. But when we switched it, put Australia up the top, it looked like America was less dominant than
well,
Australia in size.
that is a
Yeah.
really bad distortion and gone away. So the first people that started doing the maps were the Portuguese, the Spaniards, and the Brits sailing around the world, and they drew the equator on the bottom 1/3. So
Hmm.
so every map a kid looks at in every school, the north is stretched 2/3,
Yeah.
and the south is 1/3. So it looks like Greenland's the size of South America when South
Yeah.
America is 9 times larger than Greenland, and it's really a distortion that needs to go away.
It
I mean,
is.
why can't the equator be right down the middle? I mean, why?
Yeah.
I mean, it is batshit crazy. But hey, I can't wait to see you again. I lecture in Australia. Do you know the
Yeah.
date?
We'll
Do you know
definitely
the
catch
date?
up.
Do you know the date?
No. So what's the date for your lectures, or
Yeah, for my lecture in Sydney, if I go
the,
to, I have
did
to
you
go
say
to,
June?
it's what?
I haven't got. Yeah, I've sort of clicked off from my internet here at the
Yeah,
moment. So
anyway, I think it's I don't know, it's in
yeah,
June. You can find the dates at howardfarran.com, but I hope I get to do dinner with you and
yeah,
David and my brother Paul and
yeah. No, it's lovely.
his
Yeah,
husband Jason and
yeah.
my two sons will be there. And Jayne, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, you're
And
very welcome.
her name is Jayne Bandy, but if she works with Dennis any longer, she'll probably be Jayne Brandy. Probably drive her to start drinking.
I know there's a few changes of my name, but we won't go there.
All right, it's Jayne Bandy at dentalphoneexcellent.com. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And tell Kathy in Texas to come on the show.
Yeah, that'd be really good actually, because yeah, I had dinner with Kathy quite recently at the beginning of the year, and I always love talking to her, find out what she's doing, and she was quite interested to see what I was doing. She once said to me, she said, you should really get into this and do some training with teams, and I said, oh, I don't know whether that's something I'd be interested in. And as time went on, I took her advice, and Linda Miles also said that to me, so. I value their opinions greatly, and I'm glad I took their advice.
And one of my other mentors was Ruth Port and her late
Oh,
husband George Port. They
yeah.
taught me so much. Did you see Ruth Port very much?
I didn't catch up. I think Kathy obviously always catches up with Ruth in Sydney.
Well, if
So,
you see Ruth
uh,
Port, tell her I
yeah.
sent her my love. Last question:
Well,
why is Mary Tyler Moore on your wall?
no, it's Audrey Hepburn.
Oh, that's Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah, it's my Audrey. Yeah, I like to. Yeah,
Wow, I don't know why, but I'm still looking at. I'm still seeing
it's
Mary
funny.
Tyler
I
Moore.
mentioned it to Brian, and I love Mary Tyler Moore. Bless her soul.
Did
She's
you
not
know
with
that
us.
was Cap? Huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that looks like
To
Mary
Brian,
Tyler Moore.
I said to Ryan, I hope you don't mind Audrey Hepburn being here today with us. And he said, oh, no, she looks great. And I said, no, I meant me. So
Did
anyway,
Audrey Hepburn, was she married to Howard Hughes for a while?
you asked me really intricate questions here, Howard. Let me think. I'm not sure.
Huh? I think she was.
I should know a lot
Yeah, I
about her,
think she
but
was. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show.
thank
I'll
you.
see you in Sydney.